Hey there, how are we doing today? Welcome to another unscripted episode with Antara and Garima. And as always, I have a question for you. Have you ever thought that one little second that makes all the difference in your life actually holds 1,000 milliseconds? And that 1 millisecond holds 1,000 microseconds. And that one little microsecond means everything for the guest in the studio today. Because that one little microsecond can make him win or lose. In his life, time isn't the main thing. Time is the only thing. Joining me today in the studio is the first Omani circuit racing driver, Mr. Ahmad Al-Harthy. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
We're super excited to do this.
Absolutely.
And there's so much to ask. And we need to make it quick though.
Yeah. No, I
Just like
really
the game.
enjoyed that game that I played with you, that whole Reflexes
Yeah,
one.
it was something that I really enjoyed,
Right.
especially before. I think for me, before going into qualifying,
Right.
it's just to test your reflexes
Right.
and how fast you are. But it really warms the entire body up. It's always very, very important. In many different sports, people have different things that they do.
Right.
And it was great to see that you had these tennis balls here.
I think it's like a connection between the mind and the body. Because you just have to be so fast with the reflexes.
When I look at tennis balls, it's either to play tennis,
Yeah.
or now these days it's obviously paddle,
Right.
but or for this reflex,
Yeah.
or more in terms of also taking a lot of back pain away from me. So it comes with two sides, the good side and the painful side.
Okay, fair enough. So while I was researching and just trying to read, what really happens in your world, how much is it, that's when I understood that how a little millisecond or a
Yeah.
microsecond is so important for you guys. And that's where I
Absolutely.
also came across this little game. Like every time I would watch this video, I was like, dude, this looks cool. But you got to educate me on the reflexes. Let's start from there. Because what I understand is that a normal human being, the reflex time would be 0.7 or 0.8 seconds. Whereas you guys are literally trained in a way where you bring it down to probably 0.3 or 0.4. I don't know what is for you.
Honestly, I don't have any number to that, but it's just something that it's part of our trade in terms of, especially in circuit racing, where you have you're competing against cars that are on the racetrack at the same time with you.
Right.
And your attention to minor details is very, very important in terms of finishing the race or
Right.
not at times.
Right.
Able to go into the first corner and survive it in terms of not having any contact, for example. But in terms of reflex, it's something that I think naturally comes. The more you do and the more you race, it's it falls under the concept of racecraft. Racecraft is something you can't buy. It's something that you can't get overnight. It comes with experience, and I think mainly for circuit racers. So when we talk about circuit racing, what are we really talking about?
Yes, please.
We all fall under the umbrella of motorsports, and the umbrella of motorsports is very, very big. It goes from Formula One all the way down to drifting. You know?
Right.
And if we are going to categorize that,
Right.
it looks more like circuit racing for us is more closer to Formula One. It's more closer to the races that happen on the circuit itself.
Okay.
And in terms of what are the most common types of racing that happens, endurance and sprint. Sprint is Formula One style, where you have a race that it doesn't go over, I would say, 2 hours in that sense. So yes, it has tire changes, it has fueling in the past with Formula One, but today we are in my category. I used to be a sprint racing driver, I used to race for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and now we're endurance races. So that means we don't race for less than 1 hour, and we go up all the way to 24 hours. And between that, we've got the 2-hour races, 3, 6, 12, 10 hours. There's so many different lengths of races and championships and famous competitions that have specific rules and requirements.
Right.
So, that is where we are at the moment in terms of endurance racing.
Right.
And we are in one of the most competitive and biggest championships in the world at the moment.
Wow.
Take us through a typical day. Like, how does it start? How does it end?
A typical day on a race weekend, or a typical day
race weekend.
in my life?
Typical day, race weekend.
Yeah, so for the last few years, a typical race weekend would consist usually of three days. So not talking about how early we have to come, but once we're on the track, it usually starts off on the first day, which is maybe day 4, I would say, and then you're counting them down. We do a track walk. So the entire team, along with the drivers, the engineers, the mechanics, and anyone who wants to come along, we do this track walk. And it's not because we don't know where we're going, or it's not because we haven't been to this track before. It's mainly just to acclimatize ourselves to any small changes that has happened since we were last there. Just feeling that connection between the track and ourselves before going out, paying attention, discussing certain corners, gradients, change in curbs, even on the paint that is on the curb, for example. And in our championships, there's a lot of safety updates that come along.
And all these things that you go to just see once again, they all play a part to...
The whole weekend. It plays a part in the entire weekend. For me, for
and
my
your performance also.
Yeah, I think it has
When you said the paint.
Look, it's not one of the funnest things to do, or the most exciting things to do is to walk the track. A lot of the drivers don't really like it, but it's important, and it's some teams would make it part of their DNA to do that. And for sure, 2024 saw me walk all the tracks with my teammates, engineers, mechanics, sometimes friends who were along.
I think it's a part of the prep, like how they say before you get into anything, just make sure the more prepped you are and
more you know,
prep,
the better
the better the result.
Me as
is
a
going
driver,
to be.
I could see something that could actually save my race, in terms of, if something happened, I know that there's an escape road that I never saw it from when I was in the car. But when I walked it, I realized, if something happens on this corner, I can actually go out, continue and continue racing if that happened. So that starts always with that kind of track walk. And then obviously we have our meetings between drivers and the engineers to the plan. It's very detailed meetings.
When you say meetings, how many people are we really talking about? How many people make that one team?
So not everybody is in that meeting, but for the championships, so the average type of championships numbers, what we do, we're looking at about maybe, I would say, an average of 20 people per car.
What per car?
And that is sometimes the roles are shared between the cars itself, because if we just talk about the World Endurance Championship, which is a championship I'm competing in.
Right.
And there was a great performance 2024.
2024 and 2023 in that championship was something special. So coming back to the number of people around the car and with the car, it's an average of that, depending on the race itself. But you're looking at a close inner team of about, in this meeting, you'd be about 10 people.
Okay.
That's including the 3 drivers of both cars. So because we have, with BMW, we have in this world championship, every manufacturer is only allowed to have 2 GT3 cars. So we're one, and our sister car is another.
Right.
So we are technically racing each other, but we're one family.
Right.
So when we sit for these meetings, we're sitting together.
Okay.
And we discuss everything that is related to this race weekend. And if it's the first one, then there's nothing much to discuss from the one before this.
Right.
So usually later on, we discuss about our last performance, what happened, what can we do to increase our performance, and everything that comes along with that. But more importantly, we go through the rules and regulations, the circuit requirements here and there. And this is us doing it prior to the official one.
Okay.
Because then we will have another official one from the organizers themselves. But we're, as drivers, we're more prepped in that sense.
Right.
We'll look at small things like pit lane speed, entering the pit lane, because some of our drivers and sometimes me, we're in more than one championship. So we could be in Japan today, and then next week we're racing a different championship with different rules and regulations.
Right.
So it's more like resetting ourselves and making sure that we're on the same page. Right. Then it goes, once we're done with that, obviously we have the championship briefings and meetings. And I won't bore you with all the safety checks that happen during that time.
Let's be elaborate.
And there's someone who
Extensive.
does it, you know. They make sure that our helmets, helmets that we're using are up to date, FIA approved, and everything goes through a checklist. Then obviously we start on the track with free practice 1, and usually it's followed by free practice 2 on the same day.
Okay.
So usually that will be on, for example, if the race weekend's on a Sunday, that will be on Friday.
Okay.
Saturday, we will see another thing called free practice 3.
Okay.
And then we go into qualifying.
Okay.
And usually I'm the driver who qualifies for the team based on the rules and requirements.
Right.
And on Sunday, most of the time it's the race day, we go straight into the race.
Track.
Yeah, usually in midday, just as between 12 and 2, there's no real official starting time. And usually it's a 6 hour, the average race is 6 hours. Wow. Some are 10, like our first race weekend of 2025 will be in Qatar. And Qatar is a 10-hour race.
Whoa.
And then everything is 6 hours, except for the biggest race on the planet, which is the Le Mans, 24 hours of Le Mans. That's a 24-hour race. And then obviously we have our last race weekend is in Bahrain, which is another 8-hour race. Wow. Everything in every other race is a 6-hour race.
So you're going to be back like 10 kgs lesser than what you are right now.
Our weight really fluctuates a lot during a race weekend, and mainly because of the loss of water.
Right.
And that is something that we do a lot to make sure that we are prepared. So we have our, our trainers for the race weekend around, physios, and they help us with obviously making sure that we're hydrating, making sure that we're eating the right meals at the right times.
Right.
It's pretty disciplined because of, in terms from us as drivers, we who are in this championship have been doing this for some time. So it's not something new. We are, and we don't really need to be babysitted that much in that sense, because we know what we're doing. So that is part of every driver's requirements as well.
Right.
So that also happens. And then you've got, depending on the racetracks, the pain that our body goes through is really high because of I would say the continuous G-force. I wouldn't say the peak G-force. That's Formula One, where they have really high peaks, but they only race for an hour and a half, an hour 45, while we're in the car for a longer time. So we're just experiencing that G-force in longer time and longer. And it always depends on the racetrack. And it always depends on drivers. So sometimes you have certain requirements that you need to be addressed as soon as you come out of the car, because you're going to go back into the car.
Right.
So, and the time is short. So
exactly.
to be very strict. So that is when you have your team looking after you, making sure that the driver is fine and is good to go. I came from another race a few weeks ago in Dubai, 24 hours of Dubai.
Okay.
And I was literally car, physio, because the rules there didn't allow us to rest much.
Right.
Because of the strategy we were doing.
Right.
So it's very, 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 you have to always be on standby. You have to always make sure you can have some carbs, or some proteins, just whatever you do, just make sure you have it at the same time that you're prepared to go back into the car.
Yeah.
But this comes through, racecraft, it comes through experience, and it comes through not getting overwhelmed.
Right. What are the speed limits that we're talking about here? At what speed are you really driving when you're talking about those 6 hours and 24 hours?
Speed limit,
not limit. There's no limit
does not
technically.
exist. It doesn't exist.
There's no limit. But what are the speeds that we're talking about on which you're driving there?
So our speeds are always controlled in the pit lane, in the entrance to the garages and where they change the tires and refuel. That's always controlled. Okay. So we're talking about anything between 40 and 60 kilometers, depending on the track and depending on the organization. Organizers, what they feel is correct for that race weekend.
Right.
And if I go 41, I get penalized.
What?
1 kilometer is a fine in hundreds of pounds. And it's also, it is basically a penalty that you would have to serve during the race. That's how strict it is.
And here we think that we are the ones who are paying the maximum fines and you can drive at any speed that you want.
I always said that in racing we respect the rules a lot more than actually on the roads here.
Wow, it's that controlled there. Okay.
On the track itself, it all depends on the average speed.
Okay.
Depending on the racetrack, depending on obviously the length of the track, on the corners, the speeds that you can get can vary. So I would say our fastest racetrack for us is in Le Mans because it has the longest straight.
Okay.
But you don't always go to the fastest racetrack that has a longer straight, for example, because sometimes tracks that don't have the longest straights could also be very fast tracks. We look at a track like Monza, which I've raced in the past. It's not part of the World Championship, but it is it's about 70 to 80% of the track full throttled. So it's a very, very fast race. In terms of our average speeds, it's very, very different. And I don't really look at my speed when I'm racing. It's not like here in the car where the biggest, most attractive thing on the dashboard is your speed limit.
Right.
For us, it's one of the smallest things on our display unit. We're looking at and we're doing a lot of different things at that time, which we're focusing on. And mainly it's to make sure that you are able to achieve the best lap possible.
Right.
How to achieve that is a different question.
Right.
But in terms of, I would say, corners where you would think, I don't think I can go more than 100 kilometers into this corner. We're doing over 200 plus, in that sense. For us, the faster we go, the more downforce we get on the race cars. It means the car is glued to the track much more than anything else. Our philosophy of racing is very, I would say, opposite an airplane, where our car wants to take off, but we're putting all the pressure on it to stay on the ground. Our wings and everything that you see from a cosmetic point of view is actually working.
Right.
Whereas the plane wants the wings to lift. So that's a nice way of looking at it in terms of what each one is in its own
So you're technically just following the instructions that you keep getting on the radio, and then you just don't look at the dashboard.
That's
is what
a good
you're
question.
saying.
How much do we talk on the radio?
Well, we talk non-stop when it comes to radio, but your radio is
very
definitely
limited. Very limited. The driver does not want to be talking to the engineers.
Unlike what we see in the movies.
Yeah,
where they're constantly
you gotta
having
do
a
this, you gotta do
conversation.
that.
So,
Conversations happening.
I think you're referring to Drive to Survive, maybe.
We've got you see a lot of reference to that in the conversation.
The F1
right?
Netflix, yeah. So what you see on these documentaries are sometimes a bit
Dramatized.
Exaggerated.
Yes, it's great. It's amazing to watch. It's brought so much new attention to Formula One worldwide, to motorsports as well, and to different disciplines. But what usually happens for us is the level of communication is left to the minimum because the driver is in a zone of his own. And it also happens in Formula One where you hear the driver say, just leave me alone now, But in terms of the information that comes across is always usually to do with traffic. If we require help with it, it is usually to inform you about your pace. It's usually to inform you about danger, safety. So a lot of it is actually, I would say, a lot of the calls are more a safety call than anything else. But now in our type of championships, which is the World Endurance Championship, we have a lot of displays within the car that is also taking over the job of an organizer telling you that there's something happening on the racetrack.
But doesn't that divert your attention as well?
No, it's within our frame and it's within our vision.
Okay.
And it's also studied very well that call that's coming, it's just a flag. Basically, and that's the flag which we are looking out on the racetrack anyways. So it's actually safer to be able to see that than to look for the marshal who has the flag.
Right.
And this is a technology that's been tested for many years, and it's been working well because we have so many complicated rules and requirements when we're racing. A lot of people watch us and think they don't really understand what we're going through to make sure that we are following the rules, because the minute you break the law, you break the rule, it's not always intentional. For example, we have a countdown that something's going to happen to the track in 10 seconds. And that something means all cars have to reduce their speed to 80 kilometers because there is an incident on the track that requires attention to. And you have to understand this is 24-hour racing.
Listening to it, my anxiety is going there. I really want to ask you that later once you finish this. That how do you even manage all the anxiety when you hear such kind of things?
I mean, finish the story. What happens after 10 seconds?
Actually, for me, the anxiety, I would say, that feeling of doing your final exam in university, the butterfly feeling is actually as the race kicks off, just before it starts. But once we're in the race, we're in our zone, we're filled with adrenaline, we're filled with so much, excitement in a positive manner, that this is part of our job. So, in terms of having these rules and regulations there, it's for us, but we're racing. And if we do not get it 100% every time, we lose positions, we lose places from other cars. In the end of a 24-hour race, we could be on the same lap as the car that's in the second position. We could be 10 seconds ahead or behind. And that 10 seconds can come back to what you did in the race, in the first hour of the race.
So
there's no way you can bring time back.
Okay, we talked a lot about safety, but could you tell us, according to you, what is something that you find the most dangerous, or something that you are always careful about when you're racing?
It's an interesting question, because I never thought of it that way. Because ever since I started, I've been blessed to be able to go and compete in championships that followed the safety regulations to its highest levels. So, we all know that I started in the Middle East, in Bahrain. The minute I left Bahrain after the first year in 2006, ever since then, I've been racing in Europe. And, they have the highest level of safety. And I was learning a lot from that side of things as a driver. I mean, one of my first courses that I did in racing, they always said, if you can afford it, buy it. So if you can afford the best helmet possible, not for its looks, but it's for its safety levels, and that is an important, you don't try and reduce in that side of things. But where we are today in terms of the level of its safety mechanisms, concepts, I've never put myself in the situation where I feel that makes me scared and that doesn't make me scared. I have more respect to certain tracks than others, for sure, because of its layout and the way it punishes drivers if they make mistakes. But more importantly, I truly believe in it and preach about the safety mechanisms that we have in this kind of racing. And this gets transformed and it trickles down to the cars that you drive. That's the level of the safety mechanisms and the latest technology that then gets down to your road car. That's how it works.
Talking about how important the time is, especially in this particular sport, like how you said that, like 1 millisecond, 1 microsecond, 1 second can really make all the difference. What you did in the first hour can finally show in the results of the
absolutely.
run. So, I remember, or I think I heard somewhere where you said that if you use your left hand instead of the right, even that can probably save you a second. If the people who are changing the tires, if they are also quicker, can you take us through some of these things? That where are these times when you can actually save it, and what are these crucial moments in the entire race where the time is of the utmost importance? Of course, you are driving, you are on that speed, that of course is there. But what are the other things where the time is really of the
so
main
many
essence?
in everything we do that is always related to time, because as you said, when we're talking about the safety element and the seatbelt way of a driver jumping into the car and buckling himself up, it was always a place where you can try and gain time. In terms, when we say gain, as in reduce the amount of time it takes. That is something that you have to keep practice on, and it changes between one driver to another. It changes from me changing from my driver A to me changing to driver B. It also makes a difference in that side of things. But what comes around it is the exciting part, is the tire changes. Your engineers, your mechanics are working on strategies that are trying to benefit you to jump ahead of the competitor. And if a mechanic changing a tire loses that 1 second for any reason, either it be a mistake by himself, or they could be a malfunction with the gun, for example, which changes the tire just because it skipped a beat, for example, and it's not able to come out. These are places where you can never bring the time back. So as drivers, we have a huge responsibility as as driving the car, but there's a huge responsibility by the people who do not stand on the podium, which are the people who are actually behind the scenes. And we're talking about people behind the scenes. They could be the ones you see on the pit lane, jumping and changing tires, fueling, refueling. But then you have the whole data station, the people who are sitting in front of screens for more than 24 hours, not leaving their desks or posts except if they have to. Up and awake and tracing your car while the driver comes out, jumps out of the car, switches off, does his thing, eat, go through his physio, and then come back and refreshed and ready to go again while these people are still on the clock working on the cars.
Right.
So that side of thing is very important. You have a lot of things. So every time you see the car going into the pit lane, every time something can go wrong. The chances of something going wrong is higher. And that is why it's a controlled environment. The whole racetrack is a controlled environment, but that zone is very important. And that's why when we talk about 1 kilometer, it's 1 kilometer. It's black and white. It's as simple as that. And I think what people, sometimes struggle to understand is the fact that when you win a 24-hour race, the things that can actually go against you is so high. So every time you're out there, there's something going against you.
Okay.
And that means that you've been able to do the job the best you can to finish the race first from all your competitors, and that is what, we don't realize sometimes how difficult that is. And it's one of the hardest parts of racing. I've seen cars do 23 hours and, plus maybe 45 minutes of that, the last 15 hours left. Some on the last lap of a 24-hour race breakdown from the lead.
No.
What can you do that can prepare you for that disappointment?
Yeah. You gave your
And that's
best.
why we're realistic.
Yeah.
And when we are racing in 24 hours, we know that until the car actually crosses the finishing line, the race is not over. And everybody's hunting. If you're in the lead, they're hunting. If you are not in the lead, you're hunting as well. So everybody's out there to get you. It's not you're not there to make friends.
So as you said, how do you actually handle the stress or the disappointment or the other side of thing, or the thing that nobody talks about?
For sure, it's very difficult. I remember, I can give you an example when I first started racing, much younger then, and I had a very small accident in Bahrain. Really small one in the Formula car that I was racing. And I got back to Oman. I was extremely depressed, upset. How could I let that happen to myself? Or, rerunning it through my mind. And I remember my mom looking at me and telling me, if this is what you're doing and you don't like it, why are you doing it? And I just snapped out of it that day straight away. And I was like, that's so true. And I shouldn't be being so tough on myself. And the best, I think, cure for that is to be able to go back and jump into the race car as fast as you can, because that's what you want to go out there and prove yourself. And, luckily I was able to understand that. And how do you take yourself from a very low point? There are low points and they're very, very, very high points in racing as well. But they are very equal in how high and how low they are at times. And then there's sometimes a lot in between. But I think, again, experience teaches you how to deal with it differently. And as an individual, you can look at it from different ways. I look at it, I always try and convert the negative into positive. And for example, if for any reason I had spun out of a race or something happened, I was like, maybe that, it was meant to be, because it could have been worse maybe 2 hours later, and something much worse could have happened. So I look at it in that way, just to raise my own, mental power, if you could say so. But I think the highs of motorsport usually, make it what's worth it. Make all the trouble, not the trouble, but all the effort, all the sacrifice, all the hardship, which we don't usually talk about, because it's not something exciting or something someone really wants to hear about it.
Well, you never know. Someone just might get inspired from that as well. That if that has happened with you, and
the majority of time, everybody wants to hear about the good stuff.
The dark
So why
side of
don't-
motorsports.
Yeah, so why don't you share
Let's
one
hear
of
it.
those
I would say
with
of any
us?
sport.
Yeah.
It's always very difficult to break through. And I think me as the first Omani in circuit racing has always meant one thing to me is to try and fight as hard as I can to get to the highest level that I am able to achieve and to hopefully create and pave a way for the younger generation to come through and make it easier for them. I would say easier, but not, an automatic privilege because this sport, doesn't have that. It's very, very tough. And you can see it in F1. If we just use, that's the extreme level of anything because that is, 0 point something % of a driver being able to make it to Formula One. And for me, it was always that idea was, there's so much more other than Formula One. Why are we just only focusing on Formula One? They're big, huge championships that today we are part of that actually has amazing racing. It has amazing fans who come to the racetracks, supporters, the biggest brands in the world, part of it. And it's just about educating this region that type of motorsport exists. And I think, part of the hardships is to be able to take and make calculated decisions. Maybe some of them could be more riskier than others. And you have to have the belief in yourself to be able to do it. So if we just step away from motorsports and say, I want to become a tennis player or a paddle player, how you just wake up in the morning and decide to do that? You played 1 or 2 games with a friend and you think you were better than them? It doesn't work that way. And we have to be realistic, It works through really, I would say this grassroots side of things. Some of us could be lucky. Some of us could be privileged. Some of us could be at the right place at the right time. And these examples cannot be replicated because it doesn't work. Or it just can't be replicated in 5 years because the industry has changed so much that you cannot follow those templates anymore. But I think what is more important is to be able to have a support team who would guide you in the right way, not to make you hear what you want to listen to or hear, to be fair and truthful to what they think. And at the same time, for you to be able to take, constructive criticism as well, because I think the older you are, the harder you take it. The younger you are, the more you listen. Once or twice I've been asked to try and mentor younger drivers or drivers who want to be drivers. But I spent 1.5 hours talking to them, and I could see it in the eyes that they were just there and they already had a plan in mind. So what was my role if you did not benefit from 1.5 hours of me explaining to you what should be done, how I think it should be done, and if you have your own plan and you're sticking to it, you don't work like that. You need to try and extract as much as you can from people who are around you, who are able to give you that information. In my starting life of racing, I could fall upon 1 or 2 people that really helped me a lot. And I was, although I was a lot matured for my age in terms of how I started and how late I started in motorsports, it was, I think, important for the time that I was in it. I don't think a younger driver could have done
Right place at the right time.
Yeah, and I don't think a younger driver could have done that at that time, where things are different in 2025. So I think we from the region, we needed someone who was a bit more matured actually, and a bit older, to be able to understand the concept of racing. And I think today it's different. Today you have younger drivers, younger karters, and these are the kind of things that we look at. I'm looking back into 2006, and some of these things I feel it was yesterday. The decisions I had to make, the phone calls I made, emails. There was no social media. There was not. It was barely internet.
Yeah,
and
true.
Emails and getting to know the right. I was like, what if this person didn't call me, or what if I didn't speak to this person? Those what ifs, we are trying to remove them as we move into more individual sports in the country. We move into more professional kind of sports competitions, we don't want to leave more to fate, and we want to have a lot more for talent and less to fate, in the sense of being at the right place at the right time.
Talking about the skill set, they say that if you're good at football, maybe the footwork might just help you in another sport like a cricket or badminton or stuff like that. When we talk about the skill set in the racing, in racing as a motorsport, what is that skill set that you can kind of use in any other sport as well, or like a crossover?
I mean, in motorsports, we tend to look at ourselves a lot more all-rounders in other sports, in other disciplines. I look at a lot of my teammates, I look at my friends from the racing side of things. Everybody is real sports fans. I watch cricket, I watch, paddle, I watch tennis, I watch rugby. I watch the sport because I appreciate the talent in it.
Right.
And not always watch it because I enjoy it, in terms of just having a cup of coffee or tea and watching something.
Do you also tend to think that what must be running inside this
Yeah,
person's...
I mean, I really try and see, and see how, how this person is unlocking their talent.
Right.
I watched a documentary of Tour de France.
Okay.
And I'm not a big cyclist, but I do cycle. So I could pick something that related to me. Obviously I watched the documentary on Usain Bolt. I watched the documentary on, not the documentary, it was more of a remake of Senna as well recently. There are these things that inspire a lot of people, but when we look at these skill sets that you're talking about, I think, football, golf, tennis, paddle. I mean, what do we do on race weekends? We play a lot of paddle, a lot. And it becomes very competitive with our teammates and competitors and so on and so forth.
I think that's just in your blood.
Yeah,
the whole competitive spirit, but the healthy competition.
I love it. A lot of people ask me, how are you under a helmet? I think they just have to see me in a paddle court and they will know that this is why he likes doing what he does, because I go for every point. And in motorsports, we go for every gap.
I have another question. See, any sports person, when he goes and he plays the sport out there, like, let's say paddle, let's say cricket, let's say football. After that, when the family member would talk to that person, the person would be like, okay, how was your game? What is the first question then in your case your family would ask? Is it like, are you okay? or I mean, because it's like any
I
job
think that's
also
what they do. They ask me, why are you getting so worked up? It's just a paddle game. It's like, it's not a paddle game for me. It's actually, we're in a competition where like,
Right.
I feel I'm in Wimbledon in tennis,
But you take it that seriously?
I do.
Ooh, you are
like
competitive. You don't come across like a very
calm person.
And like a very saint kind of a person.
There are a few people who are listening to this maybe and will agree that there is another side of the things. I really, when I go racing, it's something that I can't explain.
Okay.
It's not that I can't because I don't want to. It's just that I can't explain. It's part of my DNA. It's part of motorsports runs through my veins. And if it wasn't for my brother who introduced me to the sport at a young age, I don't know what I would have done. I think motorsports itself has made me, as an individual, a better person. I would say more focused, more spiritual in a way as well. I would say as well, very important for the younger generation. In our time at this moment, where you see a lot of children who are really confused in terms of social media, confused in communication skills, confused in just participating, concept of winning. We can't all be winners, but now they have this we're all winners business. I don't think it's where I see the next generation of young athletes coming through, because what's important for them is to get outdoors, to go play these sports. I think personally sports is a cure for so many things. And having said that, it's so important that we are able to always remember that. And as a parent or as someone who is responsible for children, I think nothing will come in the way of sports if you do it correctly.
Right. Like how they say that, the sports, you should always have one sport as your hobby or as something
Yeah.
that you really love, because it teaches you so much about life also in general.
Exactly.
It makes you a better person. So if you had to just kind of share 2 life lessons that you have learned from motorsports, what would those be?
Wow. I think
There can be more.
no. I think for me, what motorsports has taught me is to be really, I would say, determined in trying to make sure that I can have a 5-year plan. I can have a 3-year plan. When I first started working and not in motorsports, I was just living day by day, in that sense. So I think it has really helped me understand that it's very important to structure yourself, to plan, to go forward. And I think also from a motorsport side of things, I think one of the most important things for me was always about trying to be adapting to change.
Oh,
A lot.
different.
And sometimes make decisions for what they are and rather from what your soul tells you to do at times. I would say because
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
because as a person, I would want to do this,
Right.
but as a profession, it's not the right time to do it. That is where it becomes very, very confusing for me.
Yeah, there's
But it's
always a
very difficult to
conflict.
make that choice, by the way.
Huge. I mean, it's one of the hardest things because I run my own project. I run my own program. So I wear 2 hats. I wear the driver's hat and I wear the person who sometimes doesn't make the driver happy. I'm in one character that does both
It's
things.
2 different personalities.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And sometimes I have to go with what I think is right for the sport. And it's not always what's right.
That's a
for me.
very tough call, because
Yeah.
when you take calls like these or when
It's
you make
very
choices like
difficult.
those,
It's very
it's
difficult.
always the other voice that comes to your head and tells you that only if you would have done this at that time, or
Yeah.
only if you.
And I look back
Do
at
you
it-
also have that inner voice, that comes, a voice talking to you?
Not that much anymore. not
Not
that much.
anymore. So what have
No.
you
Yeah.
done
to
silence it?
Yes. How
What did you do to
what is
silence
the
it?
practice? No. Let's just discuss
it's
that.
It's not. It's just. It's a funny joke that a friend of mine at school time we used to talk about these things, but I remembered it. No, it's about wearing more than one hat.
Right.
It's not mainly about the voices that you're hearing in your head. It's more about the hats you're wearing,
Right.
the role play that you have for that particular thing.
Right.
What is good for Ahmed sometimes is not what's good for the team, or vice versa. And in terms of, but you can always find a middle ground, and you can try and please everybody in that sense. What I'm trying to say, it's a bit more technical because I'm just referring to maybe types of competitions, types of. It's not too, I would say, over the top. It's just about being with the right team, with the right drivers. But my other side of things are saying, no, it's better to go to a world championship. But we're not ready for the world championship, for example. So we have to wait in that sense. So that's
But
those are
this
decisions.
often it happens that when you have to make a call between what's good for the team or what's good for yourself. Okay, let's take the call and then you go with the team.
Yeah.
Later you realize you start comparing yourself with somebody else who took a call for himself.
Yeah.
And then when that comparison starts, you're like, only if I would have done this.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, but I don't think we look at it too much. I think for me, there's so many things in motorsports that can go wrong, go right, or here or there. I mean, for example, I had an opportunity to sign with another team.
Okay.
I'll be watching that team and telling myself, oh, what if I was with that team today?
Right.
And that is what it is. But in terms of, I look back at the year and I say, oh no, you know what? My decision
good year.
My decision was right to stay where I am. Even though we didn't win an X race or this race, as a team, we're happier. As I wouldn't have been as happy as I am, for example. So, and these are the decisions that can sometimes go one way or another. It's you can waste a lot of time looking back, and you can waste little time looking back to improve for the future. That is, if you're going to waste so much time, you need to waste the time in the correct places, if you ask me.
That's my next
That's a good
Instagram
line.
poster.
That's a good line.
Or a WhatsApp status right there.
It is what it is. And,
Yeah, true that.
And I see a lot of people, unfortunately, always. I try and be a positive person,
Right.
and sometimes it's sometimes it's a bit too much where I try and make everything positive, which is not.
Is there any saying or a belief that you have? Like, you know what? Like, for me, I'll give you an example. If ever I have to make a choice between two things and I'm like really struggling, there's this one saying that I totally believe in, which is that be careful of what you give out in the universe because it will find a way to come back to
Exactly,
you.
yeah.
Right? So that is something that keeps me sane most of the time.
Yeah.
But what is that keeps you sane? Because the kind of sports that you are in, the kind of the kind of career path that you have chosen for yourself is very fast,
Yeah.
and speed can really drive people crazy.
Fast, stressful, tough, but that's how I switch
Whether
off.
it's on the track or off, I think
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah, but I
just
switch
demands
off a lot. I switch off, and you can ask anyone who has ridden with me in a car and says, Ahmed, why are you driving so slow? I said, this is not my day job, so I'm not working at the moment. I try and switch off in terms of, the minute I step on the plane,
Right.
flying away, if it's to Brazil or Japan or wherever, the minute I step onto that plane, that is me, the racing driver. Now preparing for everything, going through the notes, going through the videos, going through everything. The time I spend now till the race weekend is prepping for everything that is going on behind the scenes.
Right.
There's a lot that we do that allows us to go racing. That is, working with the sponsors, the partners, the teams, the endless emails here and there, to working along with, creating packages for our guests who are coming down, to making sure we represent Oman in the right way, to make sure that, we're...
So then technically you're working both the time. Now when you're on the plane, you're thinking about what's happening in the race, and when you're off the plane,
Yeah,
you're
I'm
technically
preparing.
prepping.
Yeah,
So when you're
I'm-
spending time with the family, when you're
When-
doing
when
grocery
you switch
shopping,
off.
when you're watching a movie, when you're
Sorry.
watching that documentary, or when you're playing
I
paddle.
mean, I try and so it's during a season it's very difficult, but we have certain times of the year that it's
Quiet.
it's family time.
Right.
Usually that's around the holidays, and then most of the time when I'm around, I if I'm not straight off a race weekend, I will be trying to do as much as I can, and just compensating that time. They're coming to an age where they're understanding what I'm doing, and that is important. But I think
I want to know, what does a day look like in your life when you are not in the season prepping for it or doing anything, and you're just like completely, because see, I know I try to research and check it out on like Instagram, LinkedIn. You're not there anywhere. You don't share.
I
your
don't
personal
like
life.
to. I don't
Yeah.
like to. Exactly.
So I'm assuming that it's done very consciously. Like you're
Of
really a
course.
very, very private person.
If it was up to me, I wouldn't have social media.
Really?
Yeah, personally, I don't think I would.
But the
be,
kind of sports that you're in, you like every sports person is like having million followers and has a side income on that also. Then
Yeah,
the
I'm
actual-
not
How
that
is your
person.
social media game? How are you leveraging your social media? Because I
I'm
remember you
not.
said,
yeah, he's
but you
not.
said 2006, it was way harder to connect with people. Today, you
I-
have
yeah.
an online presence.
So my social media presence is mainly surrounded about what I do as a race
Correct.
person.
Right.
Correct.
And my social media is to make sure that the people who are following us and supporting us get the right information from me, from an educational point of view and from an informative point of view. It is not about what I ate for breakfast. It is not what I'm going to be doing for lunch. It is not that I get to see the amazing countries in the world. It's not that, There are people for that.
Right.
For me, it's not about, trying to, I don't know if to milk it in a way that shouldn't be done.
Understood.
In that sense. For me, it's about.
You're very focused.
But don't
Making-
you think that will actually help you with the sponsorships as well? Or no, it doesn't play a part?
No, I don't. I personally don't think so, because
I don't think sceneries would.
no, I know a lot of people will argue with me right now, but
Okay.
I'm also very selective with who I work with.
Okay.
And for me, it's always been the number one aim is to make sure that we represent our country in the right way. And motorsports is a different lifestyle, business style that's a lot different. And our activations are very, very exciting activations. And that's what you will see in 2025 more, where we will be working with our partners to make sure we activate much more for the race weekends itself. And this is where social media comes in. Social media is not just about, what we just talked about. Social media is about linking the championships, showing people what's happening in 450,000 people at Le Mans 24 hours.
Yeah.
Where do you see that in this world?
450,000 people. I'm just imagining the kind of crowd.
450,000 people at the Le Mans 2023 championship, which celebrated 100 years of the Le Mans the race weekend. And there was a Omani driver, a Omani flag, and we finished on the podium. That is what,
Wow.
that is what I feel, that is where the
That's how you
social
give back
media
to the
awareness should
sponsors
be
too.
there.
Yeah.
That is where we're proud of it. There are obviously things that we do, and obviously from a marketing point of view, from a communication point of view. But I think that is what our partners believe in me and the program more.
Right.
So, I mean,
what is
when you
your way
have
of
your-
celebration? I mean, like, sorry, I'll just ask that question. When you just feel that, of course, that moment is like great, but of course, you would also be rewarding yourself with something. Or what is your way of celebrating?
It's
This success.
the celebration is always caught by someone else. The real, that real feeling on the top step of the podium, that it's worth it. After all of this time that we've been, working hard, either on the track, off the track, physically, fitness wise, the pain that we go through during a race weekend, making sure this win is not just me, it's the team, it's the people who are standing behind, we call it the curtains sometimes. It's the sponsors, the partners, the ministries, everybody. This is our win. And I never say it's my win.
Right.
It's a collective sport, joint sport, which involves in a lot of people being part of it,
Right.
When we're talking about, the power of media, the power of social media, the power of live TV, we're talking about a championship that's viewed around the world. We're talking about it being live for 24 hours. Which race is covered for 24 hours live non-stop?
Right.
Very few things that, if you go to a concert, it will be for a few hours.
Yeah, of course.
But as a race, and that thrill and that excitement continues for 24
Endurance.
hours.
Yeah,
endurance
that's
racing,
crazy.
that is when it's really, proud to see that the commentators who are talking about the championship mention and talk about the efforts that you have done as a driver and appreciate you as a driver.
Right.
This to me is more important than anything else, because we know we're doing it the right way. For me, I hope and always try and believe that the people who are following us on social media are the people who I look at as true fans, true supporters, who majority of them really mean well. Where today's world of social media can be, you have a lot more followers because they actually don't like you and they envy you. And
They
just wanna see what you're up
their
to.
job is just to comment negative comments and
Yeah.
put you down. And if you were to read that, you'd require some help, just to get you out of that zone of
Yeah.
taking yourself down for no reason.
Yeah.
That is what I look at it from a different way.
So you let your
As a
work
sports
talk and-
person, I call myself an athlete from Oman. I think my main job is to make sure I can perform at the best level I can and focus 100% on the program more than anything else. But having said that, we do obviously work a lot with our partners to make sure that we cover these things and to make sure we do it in the right way. And they know when we are ready to do something which makes which there are synergies to doing that, then we would do it for sure.
So, what are these qualities that actually make a sponsorship deal successful? And what do you look for when you
I would
approach a sponsor?
say sponsorship and sports go hand in hand. Very few times you see any sporting event without a sponsor. The ability, you look at the largest sports in the world. And I'm proud to say we are part of that now. The World Endurance Championship is one of the largest motorsport programs in the world. You look at tennis, you look at Wimbledon, you look at the Super Bowl, you look at different things, and you see there are sometimes iconic sponsors. Without mentioning many names, you have a watch which is just known for its presence in golf and tennis, for example. You have many brands that have been there for years and years. So that is, they're placing themselves in the place they believe to. Now, when you look at other upcoming new partners, new sports, new companies want to get the message across, they use sports in such an interesting and exciting way. The On shoes, I never knew of them, before seeing Federer on them, and Uniqlo, for example, new upcoming. I hope I'm allowed to mention these brands, but these are the places where they use a platform for that. And in my scenario, it's a bit different because we've always wanted to create a program that has an Omani driver, powered by Omani sponsors, driven by a Omani flag team. That was our goal when we started.
Right.
And it was my job to really try and educate the marketing side of the country's companies that this is what we're doing, this is what we are competing in.
Was it easy? Tough?
Absolutely. One of the hardest things I've ever done.
Really?
I had to get my master's in marketing. I had to continue for me to be able to speak the language.
Right.
And I loved it, and I love marketing, and I love marketing my country, and I love working with the sponsors.
Wow.
And I love building projects with them, and feeling that win with friends, families, and partners who believed in the project.
Right.
Partners who came, partners who went.
Right.
They were all part of it as well.
Right.
And, I believe Motorsports, I'm biased, is one of the strongest ones in terms of that, because we are moving billboards. We move around the world at very high speeds, and it is built and designed for that concept of sports sponsorship. And it's something I really work a lot and update myself as well, because our job is to make sure that we continue having the right support in the right manner with the right companies. And it's never about a 1-year plan. It's always about something that is sustainable and long, and it has to make sense for them.
Right.
Yeah. And I think here a lot of times people don't really understand, I would say, not just the concept of sponsorship, but the reasoning of sponsorship as well. I say that because a lot of people feel, it's a given that you have to sponsor me. Or, I always try and, before doing that, you have to always invest in yourself. You have to invest in your program. You have to invest in what you're doing. And as soon as you start, achieving the rewards, there will be someone that will be interested in doing something. And sometimes it's not their fault, because at times the championships are just too small for that added benefit.
Right.
And until the championship itself grows, then you would get more interest in that. So it's, I remember, I was in the UK and I had, the British drivers or some of the foreign drivers with me and saying, Ahmed, it's so easy for you. You're the only Omani driver. You must be getting all the
support, all the attention.
People have that assumption, right? They're like,
automatically,
it must be so easy right now.
And I said, absolutely. I look at it in a different way. You're all fighting for different slices of the pizzas from different companies that are there to support you. So if you take this table and it's got 8 slices and everybody's fighting for these 8 slices.
Correct.
I said, I don't have my pizza. I have to bake it myself.
Oh.
And it's a challenge. It's different things. You have to bring all the ingredients. You have to make sure that you don't mess it up. So I really do hope that, this will make it easier for the younger generation. And they're coming. It's just a matter of the time and hopefully the way they break into the sport. I've said many years and many times, I'm the first and only, first and only, first and only.
No, you
But I'm
want
not the
there
first
to-
and only anymore.
Wow.
You know, I'm the first,
Come a long way there.
and there's more. There's younger drivers coming through.
Lovely.
Al-Faisal Al-Zubair, he's coming through in a very, very nice professional way.
There you
So
go.
that
You're
is-
inspiring so many.
I hope there's I
young-
hope I inspire more in different sports as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Talking about different sports, you know what happens is that when you take sports as a career, that conversation at home is not easy,
Yeah.
right? Because they always, you know, the first reaction that you generally get is that, okay, fine, that is happening, but what is the real career that you want to make, right? That's a backup. And now when we talk about motorsports, it can be really expensive as well, right? How did you go about having that conversation with the family? Because also you did not start like, you know, the generally the sports people are going to be like, you know, when I was 6 years, 7 years, I was training since then with him. I think you were into
I didn't
Ernst
come-
& Young, you were into accounting, and then
Exactly.
suddenly a career change happened.
Yeah, and a very difficult conversation. And again, I don't come from parents from a sporting world,
Right.
so that's also different.
Right.
Today, if
I'm
I
sure.
had that conversation with my kids, I know
Yeah.
what it's about, and
Yeah.
I know a lot more of it. So having this discussion with both my parents was very, very difficult, but I got their blessing, and I was given an opportunity by my workforce as well. Ernst & Young at that time, take a year off and go and see what had happened. And you don't get these opportunities much, and I think it was very important that I did get that blessing. From a financial point of view, for sure, because that is what made me start walking and start learning how to run.
Right.
And then it didn't continue, but it put me on my feet the right way, and steaming forward. But more importantly, I think it was to be able to educate everybody around me, and says that motorsport is what is it for me is different from anyone else, and I think that you have to also understand the safety side of it. We talked about safety in the beginning, but
Right.
to educate them about it and
Yeah,
what
of
it
course.
means was important. So the same people who are calling my mom and complaining to her and says, how do you let your son go and do this?
Yeah, because there's a lot of risk involved.
And I say that today they're one of the first people to call me and congratulate me. So what has changed?
Well, that's a change. That's a real
Yeah.
change.
I think what changed was to educate them that this is more. There's a lot more to sport. For me, to be given the award by His Majesty Sultan Haytham in my role in sports is the biggest trophy I have today.
Absolutely.
And you do feel appreciated, and you feel a lot more motivated to go and do more.
Right.
And to achieve more. And it's not, no, this is it, I got this and I'm done. No, it's the other way around.
Right.
So I think, to answer your question, the role of the family is extremely important.
Absolutely.
And
The support system.
a lot of times I get called by family members or for people who have kids and want to discuss different things in life, and
Right.
just to share my journey with them. This is where I have to give back to the people of the country as well, in that sense. I've learned a lot, and I would love to people to experience what I've experienced.
Who's your go-to person at home?
It's very, I would say my brothers, and obviously my family, my mom. I go to different people for different
Things.
Not just because I want to hear what I want to hear.
I like how the inner voice said, this is going to be aired. People are going to watch. They're going to hear this.
Everyone at home is gonna watch it.
So it's a huge network of people that I try and understand. If it's a big moving, I had a huge career move shift
absolutely.
in 2024, being with BMW for the first time.
Right.
That was huge.
Right.
Who do you talk to about that?
Yeah.
I had really close friends and people who I listened to and learned a lot from. And I took and understood as much as I could from that side. And I'm very proud because it's been an amazing journey so far. And this is where I think we need a support team, where you have the right people who you can ask the right questions. And it's always, I am a private person. I keep a lot of things to myself as
Right.
well. And there has to be a limit to that as well, because sometimes talking too much about things really doesn't take you forward. It makes you more confused.
And vulnerable.
Sorry?
Vulnerable.
And vulnerable. Yeah, exactly.
How have your friendships evolved from the time you've started to now? Do you still have people who were there with you then? Are they still there?
Yeah.
Or has it changed?
No, it's. I'm very proud to say that the ones who started with me are with me. When we created Oman Racing, we created a team surrounded with volunteers. No one was on a payroll.
Whoa!
And
Wow.
up to today, that's how the concept of this team works. And the people who I'm talking about, the ones in Oman, I'm
Right.
not talking about the racing side of things.
Right.
The people who support us, they've increased in numbers. They are wanting to help, not me as Ahmed, but me as a Omani driver, me as seeing the flag fly high, taking us to different, heights, and that is amazing. And that's what I really appreciate. And and some of them were with me from kindergarten.
Wow.
We grew up together.
Wow.
And everybody's done their own thing, but they don't come as much as before because of how these races are scheduled, and it's very hectic. So when they do come, it's very nice to see them at the racetracks, and as well as that, the new blood that's coming in,
Right.
the new marketing teams, the new
Right.
partners that I'm working with, the younger generation, full of life and full of excitement and full of, you will never understand what I do unless you come and you touch and you breathe it. And that is what makes it special, You could be someone who watched tennis on TV, but the minute you go and watch tennis in court number 1 or center court in Wimbledon, you would leave there with a different experience for the rest of your life.
Right.
And that's the same
It's
here.
the whole energy inside the stadium. It's the same passion and the love for sport that people have, and it's all just good positive energy, and those vibes just kind of translate, I feel.
Yeah, and that's why I
Yeah,
don't
I
like
know.
always
When you
talk
see
about
any sport
motorsports.
live-
I'd like to, join it and club it with so much more. But motorsports is much better, but it's always exciting.
Right.
Yeah.
What does the future hold specifically for Oman here? And when we talk about motorsports and Oman, what do you think is the kind of news that we will be listening, hearing, or reading in the next 3 years
Well,
from the world of motorsports?
To be honest, I believe we are the best exporters of the region,
Oh, okay.
in terms of motorsports,
Right.
in terms of active racing drivers.
Okay.
And that is with our current structure with no racetrack in Oman. So I really am looking forward to seeing, now it's, I would say the time that in the next few years that we will hopefully have a racetrack. But it's not about having one, it's about having a sustainable one. It's about having
Right.
one that's actually used
Right.
for multi-sports, for different types of, sporting events as well. And, we are, I think it's very positive because of the importance the sport is having in the region itself. There's, 4 Grand Prix happening now in the Middle East itself, which is huge. And I never thought it would be like that, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And I think it's very exciting to have the younger generation going go-karting, and say we have 10 now, we need 20, we need 30, we need 40. That's what we need at the moment. And I think that anything we could do to support that, we're there for them.
Okay. And what does the future look like for you? When I say that, let's say I see you, I'll be seeing you often. I mean, not often, I'll be seeing you before 5 years also and 10 years also. But let's say I'm having a conversation with you after 5 years. What are the things that we are discussing at that time?
Well, I started in 2006.
Right.
And if you ask me, would you be having an interview right now talking about Le Mans, talking about competing in Sao Paulo and Fuji in Japan, I would have said you are definitely dreaming. Because, if you asked
But
me
here
5
we
years
are.
ago,
Yeah.
if you asked me that 5 years ago, the World Endurance Championship, Ahmad Al-Harthy racing in WEC, it was a bigger than there's a few left on the bucket list. There are a few races I'd love to do.
Okay.
But the question always comes, and how fast am I? You know, how much am I enjoying and loving the sport? As a profession, you know, that you're focused a lot of your time in it as well. You know, the opportunity to race and be a partner and teammate of Valentino Rossi,
Someone who used to watch
among other amazing drivers as well. They will all get upset because I didn't mention them by name. You know, everyone you learn something from, and you create a new bond, a friendship, and the path takes you to a different way. I keep that open because I love moving the target sometimes, and you know, as long as I keep driving fast and I think loving the sport, I think I want to be here for a long time. You know, I wouldn't say 2, 3, 4 years. It all depends on how things go, and hopefully still involved in it in some way or form.
Okay. Wow, fantastic.
Lovely.
What a fantastic
Time
answer.
for the rapid fire.
Yeah, let's do that. So now we're going to throw some questions where you don't have any time to think.
All
Let's
right.
go
We give
one
you
by
enough
one.
time. You want to do it?
Start.
Okay. Favorite track?
Wow, Monza.
Your go-to pre-race meal.
Something with carbs.
Dream car?
Now I have to say BMW.
Got the logo right there. One life lesson that you've learned because of racing that you apply to your regular life.
Dedication, I would say.
Toughest competitor?
Wow, had many.
You don't have time. Come on.
Honestly, that's a very difficult
Second, millisecond, microsecond.
We let that skip. I had so many. Didn't know where to start.
Okay, but then if you just had to name 2, 3, okay.
Yeah, it's a difficult
Yeah.
one.
You know,
I think this is him saying, don't.
Yeah, this is the inner voice taking over. Like this is like this is going to be it.
Next.
What if somebody is just kind of
This
watching
one,
it?
this one next. I didn't want that person to think he was a competitor.
Your competition should never know.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
One thing that you can't live without on the track.
My phone.
Oh,
Yeah.
your hidden talent.
Um,
Hidden talent. Okay.
That nobody knows.
wow, these are hard questions. You know, I've never got them. To switch off, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah?
No, but you gotta give me something more. What is it?
A hidden talent.
Yeah, a hidden talent. You cook. You
yeah,
dance.
actually,
you.
I do good breakfast.
Oh.
Leave
very
breakfast
good.
with me.
Okay. Oh, nice. Interesting.
I know you said you couldn't answer this, but I'm still going to ask you. If not a racer, what would you be?
Wow. I think I would be something behind a desk, most likely in either finance or marketing.
That would make you happy.
I would be happy, for sure.
Would you go back to E&Y? I like the instant reaction right there. All right. Last thing that you Googled.
Wow.
We can check. It's right there.
We can allow. The phone's allowed here.
That's a good question. Strawberry cheesecake, I think.
Hey,
or just
nice.
strawberry cake, actually.
Okay.
That could be it.
Alright.
City roads or track?
Track, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Top advice received.
Wow. Back a few years ago,
Okay.
really helping me in motorsports and what discipline to follow. Really good advice. He passed away, and I still remember that conversation, and he said, you need to be an endurance racer.
Oh.
Yeah, that was really good.
Oh.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Go for it.
Most memorable moment in your racing career?
Podium at Le Mans, for sure. Wow.
Goes without saying, right?
Yeah, no. It's just, I still get goosebumps from that race.
Oman in one word.
Soul.
Okay.
Wow.
Deep. I really want to know, how much do you meditate? What music do you listen to? How is that you switch off? Because, you know, you didn't share any of that with us, by the way. That's like...
That could be rapid fire.
Okay, I have another following
Because
question.
I
Go
did
for
not
it.
know
Do you
what I
agree?
listened to.
No, wait. Do you agree that you are the most secretive person?
I've been told that a few times. I'm not secretive.
Mysterious. I think
Yeah,
you go
very
with
mysterious. And someone who can just kind of And you were a great listener also.
No, I think I confuse myself at times.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like you asked me, what's your favorite type of music? I listen to everything.
Yeah, okay,
Which
that's
it confuses a lot of people, as in, I think my algorithms and my Apple Music is just going over everywhere, at the moment. But it's not, it's just that genuinely before racing, I would say more of a shy, quiet person. And I am that, and that is who I am. And maybe that's how I answered your social media questions. There's a limit to what I am comfortable with. And through racing, obviously, I had to adapt and change, and racing unlocks me in a different way, like a lot of other
You
sports.
would just be a very good friend who's a great listener, where that if you share stuff with him, nothing's going to go anywhere. It's just going to.
I have to agree with you, but for a different reason. Because after the conversation, I had already forgotten about what you told me. So your secret is usually safe.
That's the trick.
You tell me this again, like 2 weeks later, and I told you this. I'm like, did you? So it's like I heard it for the first time. It's the truth.
Okay, talking about social media and all of that, back in the day, your family really supported you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be a little personal question. What if tomorrow your kids come to you and they say that they want to make a career in social media?
A career in social media?
A career in social media.
Wow. Look, I will try and support it as much as I can to understand, because we can't be old school all the time. And we have to also adapt to it the same way my parents adapted to me going into sports. Maybe they looked at it the same way. But it all depends on what format of this we're talking about.
Absolutely,
And I'm not pushing them in any specific sport or direction. I want them to be all-rounders. And I think that's, it's one of the questions that you will always say, what's going to happen in the next few years, and it's great because a lot of people think that they're already go-karting and so on and so forth. They're not. So it's, for me, it's whatever they do, I'll try and support as much as I can.
Lovely. And if ever there's a difficult conversation that kids of these age face to have it with their parents or to discuss, what is that little advice that you will give it to them? Because you have really convinced a lot of people in your life, I feel.
I think, today's generation is different from our generation as well. And it's not too far apart. But I think, the concept of being friends to your kids, it's a very, very, very thin line, fine line. And I think for us to be able to understand what they're thinking, we need to be there helping them in that thought process as well. And I think what we have learned from this journey is to make sure that we are there to support and give as much information as we can, and then make the person judge and decide on what they want to do. In the end of the day, it's if they're at an age where they can make their own call, they'll make their own call. So how do we prep them for the best decision? It's easier said than done.
So there it is.
One more. Your biggest critique, and what does he or she say?
Oh, wow. I can't mention the person, but they always go...
when he takes that pause, we're not getting it. That he already has the answer in his
Unfortunately,
head.
I can't mention the person does exist. And I usually 80% of it was good. Why did you have to criticize on the last 20? It's just that side of
At
things.
least we have somebody watching the entire podcast that way. Right till the end.
Exactly. Shout out to whoever's listening at the moment. He's stuck with us for the entire show.
Fair enough. So the name is not... I like how he just goes silent that I'm not giving you the name, please.
This one is dangerous.
It's like he'll just turn his head. Do you have a question? Or this is how it's going to be. But wow, what a fantastic conversation. Wow, it was great energy here in the studio today. And so much to learn from your journey. And there were so many analogies probably that I am going to use example in the next meetings that we have. There's so many examples that I'm going to use from this conversation. And wow,
we're going to be cheering for you.
Thank you. No. And we'd love to have you guys at the racetrack as well at one point.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, on that note, wow, it's already out there in the universe. You said it. Don't want to just kind of take any more of your time, but thank you so much for joining us in this studio.
It was an absolute pleasure.
All the very best.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yay. Thank you.
Beautiful.
I'm happy that I managed to do it today.